Hello and welcome to PowerWash. Today I'll be starting my career on PowerWash Simulator. Well, for anyone who is curious, who wants to ask why I haven't uploaded anything in a bit, especially part 2 of when I played this with a friend from the previous recording, is simple. I've had a little bit of a stressful week, or rest of the week, and so I've taken time off of recording, off of editing, and just doing my own thing so I can get into the right mindsets. As for recording the project that I've been a bit enthusiastic about, I've gotten some things planned to do the choreography, but fortunately schedules haven't been aligning too perfectly, so everyone I'd like to have on the project isn't immediately available for it. Which, to be fair, isn't going to be too big of a project, but it is going to be enough of a project that will definitely be more thought out than a lot of other things that I do on the channel. And like all things, it takes time, nothing happens overnight. And like I eventually plan to get to it as well as be able to finish it, but for now I have to get more things figured out, and then if schedules are optimal and everyone's available, I'll be able to start filming part 1. And for the... I'm still undecided on if I want to have it be like a full-on mini-movie, or if I want to take it just a tad further and turn it into a series. But for now, like for that project, is going to just be a part 1, and if that does well enough, I will do a part 2. But for now, I sort of needed a vacation from the chaos that is life. Yeah, sometimes life can be patient, and sometimes it can be very unforgiving. And for anyone who knows what I'm talking about, you'll understand, because, well, as of 2025, the most stable work path anyone in their 20s and 30s can get is going to be very, very low paying. And it's gotten to a point where with the job I do have, I can barely afford groceries for a week, and at the most only 4 days of groceries, and that's with budgeting. I do have to admit, I do find some comfort in knowing that I'm not the only one having money issues, but it is an issue that's going to be getting worse before it gets better. And if anyone watching my videos is also having issues, just know that you are not alone in these trying times, as people of many different age brackets as well as backgrounds, and not just where I live and a lot of other countries as well, it is becoming an increasing issue of many jobs not being available, and the few jobs that are available simply don't pay enough. And that also excludes a lot of the issues that have been coming with politics being weaponized as a means of determining hiring factors, or firing factors, which, in my opinion, the political background of someone shouldn't affect how they do a job and how well they work. Unfortunately, that's not an opinion that many people have. So, I do have to admit that for this video, it is kind of relaxing to be able to play PowerWash. And I have to admit, it is kind of therapeutic, even though it's sometimes has OCD moments. It is kind of relaxing. Like, it just scratches that one itch that normally can't be scratched. Let's see. And, well, other than that, I will be finishing my Serious Sam Siberian Mayhem playthrough eventually. I also plan to eventually finish Aliens Dark Descent with being able to speak more German, and hopefully be able to do a better job than I did for the last videos I did speak German in, because, quite frankly, I know that I've been struggling, and I have to admit I do not have the mind to really be able to go outside of what I already know, generally. Plus, I live in a country where everyone, well, not just a country, but in an area where everyone speaks the same language and never really alternates between languages, so it is a completely learned attribute, and I'd like to prove that I can do better. Not just talk about doing better and then not do much for improvement. If I'm lucky enough, I'll be able to get some help with learning German and do things. But for now, my optimism has been kind of cut short. And for anyone who is religious, and probably somewhere on the branch of being a Christian, but not an immediate branch, at the bare minimum, I do have to admit I do wonder if God is still watching everything that's going on, or if God's just taking a back seat and is just going to watch and not do much of anything. Because there's a lot of things happening in this world, a lot of evils and people doing things that they shouldn't be doing and then getting away with it. I try my best not to focus on that, because for a start I'd like to focus on more positive things and focus on more positive things. Like right now I just made a happy little montage of cleaning a van. Now to clean the back garden. Yeah. Like, I'll be honest, I'm probably not the most religious person out there, and I'd probably not make a good example of anyone that would be Christian, because, quite frankly, not every human is the same. So, what would be considered Christian from my perspective may be considered Catholic from someone else's perspective. That has to do with the fact that there's a lot of people on this world, and we are in a day and age where a lot of people do not want to agree on things. But then we're slowly turning around, so we're starting to slowly agree on things again. But considering how long it is taking for people to finally start listening to each other is concerning. Because we already have people of different age groups struggling to socialize, struggling to connect, struggling to even ask for help. Which, to be fair, to be able to ask for help requires someone to admit that they are not strong enough to do something on their own. And that requires a type of vulnerability that a lot of people have weaponized over the years, especially as of late. And so it is hard to become vulnerable now, because you can be vulnerable and then have things go in a way that just makes things even worse for an individual. And, like, going to just general issues, it isn't just one issue with society, it's just a lot of small issues that have just become so interconnected, like parts in a machine, or the parts in a wind-up clock, where even though there's like one or two things that are small, it's just that enough has been put together that the problems that were originally small and insignificant have now become much more noticeable and are doing much more work in this general world. And it does make me sad to see this world slowly tear itself apart, slowly divide people by race, by sex, by religion, and the fact that people no longer trust each other enough to be able to work together or be willing to take the time to understand. or to be selfless, or to even be willing to help friends, which I do have friends. There may not be many, but I do trust and care for them greatly. And in this day and age, I'll have to say that I am starting to consider that a privilege, considering a lot of people either don't have friends now, or they haven't been able to keep the friends that they have due to work or socio-political issues, or simply just people changing over time, and then things just not going right, as well as friendships getting ruined. And yes, change is inevitable, because no one stays the same forever, but at what point do you take a look at the world and just say, I'm done, and just leave? Which, considering that my life could be drastically different from anyone who does view this, what I can say is, don't give up. If you are struggling, please be honest with yourself, because if you are not honest with yourself, you will not be able to find the help that you're looking for. And if you are patient and you are willing to listen, you may be able to find what you want, who you want to be with, or not just friendship, but also dating, which, going into the topic of dating for a second, the first issue that I'd say that's there with modern dating is a lot of people don't understand what it is to date, and so that causes issues such as the stereotypes. It also causes hookup culture to be what it is, and it's bias. It's based upon people's appearances. It will regularly disregard the personality of an individual. And with dating, my opinion is that in order for any kind of dating to work, it must start with a bond of friendship. Because if you can't be friends, then how are you to become more than friends? And to become friends would require you to have a lot of trust. And in any dating scenario, trust is going to require time, which means if, like for example, if person A wants to date person B, person A and person B must be both willing to take time out of their day to talk with each other and to spend time with each other, to get to know each other better, to have fun, to talk, maybe even engage in hobbies that can be shared. But at the bare minimum, it must start with a friendship that is honest, and that isn't easy in this day and age where honesty is not always rewarded, and sometimes it feels like something is missing and that something isn't quite right, and it leads to people having issues, which only get worse when you account for the fact that there's a lot of material and a lot of books and movies that portray this idea that for dating, it's going to be a very specific way, but then the reality is with not just dating, but also with marriage, is that it's flexible. And the people who make up the couple have a way of working together that allows them to work together without issues and to stay interconnected in that relationship. I do have to admit I didn't think I'd be giving dating advice as something that is part of my complaints, but oh well. There's, like, in this world, if I wanted to, I could spend years complaining about this world. I could also spend issues complaining about my issues. But no matter what, that would still be complaining. And being the person I am, I don't want to complain. I'd like to talk about this world, be able to talk about the issues, and then ways some issues can be fixed over time, even if it starts small. And the first thing I have to say that's there is consequences. Because of the understanding of this world is more like an if, it's like a selection of if-then statements. Of if you do this, then this kind of outcome can happen. Whether it is a good consequence or a bad consequence. And right now, the easiest way to help a lot of the people in this world is to introduce good consequences and bad consequences and have it be introduced in a way that is understood. Because when people don't understand how consequences work, they think, oh, if they do this, then they'll get a certain reward anyways. And for example, with dating, if you think that if you behave a certain way, it's going to get you a partner in life, that way of thinking is not going to get you very far. And it will also limit a lot of your opportunities that you will have for dating, and limit a lot of the opportunities you have to do things in life, including improving yourself. And just doing things in life is not going to be easy, as everything is going to take time, everything is going to take money, and nothing that you can visibly see will generally happen overnight. Which, going back to using dating as an example of consequences, is if you take a slow path that's slow, dedicated, and has commitment from both parties, if you understand what I'm talking about, you understand that how amazing it is to see people be able to work together as equals. Which, with dating, it's not going to be perfect equals, because quite frankly, perfection is a myth. But, in my opinion, to be able to find a viable partner in life, you will be finding someone who is going to be equal to you, but can account for the flaws in your own character. Like, for example, if you are a person who is not good at talking up about your issues or not talking for yourself, a partner that would be somewhat ideal for you is someone who can understand you, someone who can listen to you, and someone who will be able to talk on your behalf when you are unable to talk for yourself. And then going back into just general consequences, with how consequences work, whether it's a punishment or something positive. Like, for example, one positive consequence is you can do good at your job, do good, have no issues, and your skills can be recognized and be put to use, and sometimes, depending on the job, you can even get a pay raise. But in this day and age, we live in a world where a lot of job sites haven't been rewarding loyalty and have been kind of just punishing people in the workforce, just generally speaking. And as a result, people are behaving in accordance to what they're able to get as positive consequences, such as, oh, if you work in a fast food restaurant and work happens to not be doing well, but you haven't been doing well with your job because of customer-related issues or customer-related complaints, there is a chance you may be temporarily let go because of the lower profits, or be let go because of your performance, without ever having a chance to learn what is going on and what happened, or be able to improve yourself. But if people had the ability to not just the ability to understand why they were let go, but also have an opportunity to understand the details of what led to them being let go, that could provide opportunities to improve as a person, instead of just letting someone go from a work site without warning, which unfortunately is a reality that a lot of people have had to live with. Yeah. And with being in the workforce, communication is also a key thing. And at the bare minimum, communication seems to be a problem that a lot of people are struggling with right now, to the extent that people can't really do much of anything. Let me explain. With how things are, and just like that I lose my train of thought. Crap. Well, there are, like at the bare minimum, there's a lot of issues in this world, and there isn't going to be just one solution that fixes them all. But the first thing we can do is actually admit that there are problems, because if you try to act like there's no problems, then no solutions are going to be brought forward, and if no solutions are brought forward, that can allow problems to simply get worse and be uncontested until eventually it becomes a significantly worse problem that has to be addressed. And whether it be through politics or people complaining about the low birth rates in the world, there's always going to be issues, and there's never going to be just one solution fixes all. But in order to have an entire society work towards a solution, it has to admit that there's a problem that requires a solution, which, in all reason, is not the easiest thing to do, and a lot of people struggle to admit their own problems. And so for a society, which is a group of people in an area, that does get intensified significantly, because it's not just one person that has to address that they're the problem, but it's everyone in that group of people that makes up a society that has to address the fact that there is a problem. And just knowing about a problem is, as well as being able to admit they're the problem, is, in my opinion, the first step to eventually fixing a problem, as well as eventually taking care of it. And because problems in this present day are very complicated, the best way you can help with taking with problems is to not only acknowledge that there's problems, but then start working towards solutions, as well as a variety of solutions, as no one solution will work for everything. I do have to admit it is going to be a bit weird. This video might even be considered controversial. But I will be honest, I am getting tired of watching this world fall apart and knowing that there isn't really anything I can do about it. But the most I can do is at least talk about the problem, and then if anyone's listening, anyone who does listen will have some understanding that there are problems here and there. And it's not just me who's having problems in the year of 2025. There's a lot of people having issues, and it's not the same issues for everyone. And because it is hard for people to even admit that there are problems, certain issues will not be addressed until later as a result. Which some could say there could be racism-related reasons, or sexism-related reasons, or religion-related reasons. But in my opinion, we're all human. We all make mistakes. No one is perfect. But the least we can do is learn to work together. Even if it's not towards a common goal, if we can work together to solve smaller problems, we can definitely come together with larger problems that are worse, or annoying, or inconvenient. Which is something that is very hard to get people to even think about. But, yeah. And for anyone who does watch, I do apologize for all the rambling. Because, like, when I don't have anything meditated, my brain will work on autopilot, and just whatever's in my mind is what I talk about, which is why I do tend to forget some of what I'm talking about, especially when I'm not really talking with anyone in particular. As I said in the beginning of this video, the main reason I've been active for a bit has to do with a lot of stress and needing a temporary break. And I'm not going to judge anyone by what country they're from, because, for a start, I do not know how anything in every country does or how anything in every state works. And I am not going to even question why things can work so differently from one country to the next, or why some issues are not in some countries but they're everywhere in others. But it is sad for me to admit that there's a lot of issues and society is sort of just is devolving into a group of children who, at the bare minimum, are not good at listening to each other. They not like talking about issues when things get serious. And it's not fun being aware of issues in this world, or the issues of society not listening to itself, and then knowing that there isn't really anything I can do about it besides watch what's happening and talk about it, hope it gets better, pray. Some people do pray a lot. Even atheists sometimes pray, not because they're thinking about religion, but because just the act of finding a reason to hope does lead to some positive outcomes. And with a little positivity in this world, we've been able to do many things. And sometimes positivity comes from having a common cause and uniting to help each other. And it's not easy for people to unite and help each other. But in all eventuality, we will have to learn how to work together, whether we want to or not, whether we're mature enough to willingly work together or not. But in the end, it's literally just us on this world. And if we don't work together to solve our problems, then what are we doing with our lives? Like in all reality, what are humans as a species doing with our lives when we can't cooperate, when we can't see past differences or see past similarities, or even listening to one another when there's a problem? Because there's a lot of problems, and those problems will get worse unless we start managing them. Which I say is that there's a way to fix those problems is not going to be likely or possible because people are stubborn. People are also not quite as smart as they think they are. Like, to an extent, you can make an argument that everyone is dumb in at least one way, if not more than one way. Then you can also make the same argument that some people can be smarter than they appear. But still, it's literally just applies to everyone. Because in the end, we are not just copied and pasted like a document, like a Word in a document. We all have our own little differences. And it's not going to be easy to agree because, quite frankly, in order to agree on an issue, people have to first talk, and in order to have any discussion, there also has to be listening. Which makes me sad to know that a lot of people, especially politicians, are behaving a bit like kindergartners who've been just given unrestricted access to whatever ice cream they want. And nothing is really being done about it because people don't think they have any power. But then they do. And if you live somewhere where you can vote, if you have opinions, feel free to think about those opinions. Feel free to write down those opinions. And if you do want to vote for a particular candidate, make an informed decision. Take the time to understand the person you are voting for. And if that person has the most ideals that you want to see in this world, then go ahead and vote for that individual. Because not like, with politics in general, there is no 100% agreement unanimously. But at the bare minimum, it's good to look for the candidate who shares the most ideals with what you are looking for and what you want to see as reasonable changes. And in all fairness, not everyone is going to see everything the same way. And quite frankly, I'm glad we don't all see the world through the exact same pair of eyes, because one, that's a highly limiting perspective. And two, it would limit the opinions that are available, and then it would prevent new ideas from being properly expressed if we all think too much like one another. So having more than one way of thinking and more than one perspective can bring a lot more to discussions, topics, arguments. Even research does better when there's more than one perspective studying something. Which, to live in this world is not an easy thing, and for a lot of people, money is always going to be a problem. Some people have easier times getting jobs than others. Some people make more money than others. Some people are just working for scraps because they don't have a good resume, or they've had issues that prevent them from being able to get a job, which, reality, getting a job in this day and age is become very hard for a lot of people. And at the minimum, no one wants to really talk about it, especially between generations, because each generation has had different experiences with getting a job, and because the experiences have changed so much, it's gotten to a point where certain groups are wondering why certain changes have happened, but then they end up learning that those changes are not new. It's just that they've gone into a different tax bracket and now they're exposed to things that other people were complaining about to begin with. And when one or two people complain about something, it's one thing. But when a lot of people within a generation end up complaining about something and then it gets even worse, it's going to just reflect on everyone because, once again, people are choosing to not listen to each other when issues are being talked about and discussed. Which, in all honesty, don't expect anyone to be perfect. Do not expect anyone to be flawless because it's impossible to be flawless. There's always going to be an issue, whether it's talked about or not. But the ultimate question on that is, are we going to talk? Are we going to acknowledge that there's problems? Or are we going to stay silent and let those problems continue to get worse? Which, in all honesty, I don't know. And I do not like being the person who has all of the information, because when I have all the information, I'm not a good communicator. And as a result, that can cause miscommunication to cause some issues. Which, it doesn't sound like it through a mic, but in person I do have speech problems. Very significant speech problems. And in a lot of jobs, if you have to talk a lot, it does show if you have speech problems or not, because if you have speech-related issues, a lot of places will not hire you because they think there's something wrong. And then on top of having speech issues, if you tend to get nervous or you have difficulty communicating to begin with, that makes speech even worse of a flaw. Oh well. Just because I have speech impairment issues doesn't mean everyone does. So, speech issues plus a minimal filter for opinions is not the best combination in this world where people are more sensitive than ever. Which, I understand why sensitivity has been pushed, but within reason, that should have limits where you should only be so sensitive, but then after a certain point, you don't need to be more sensitive, because if you're too sensitive, you have a long list of problems. This is going to have so many weird topics, and yeah, I'm not going to edit this video. I have been restricting the use of certain words Or specifically the words that would prevent me from getting any money from this video in the future. Because YouTube is ultra, ultra, ultra sensitive. I do understand why it is sensitive, because they are trying to make a platform that's friendly to everyone. But then it has started getting new issues of its own, which is why YouTube has lawsuits regularly. Which, considering that a lawsuit can make any business immediately have financial problems, so they are trying to undo some of that damage, which isn't easy considering we live in a world where people have the ability to record all information in an instant. We have access to the entire world depository of information through cell phones now, and cell phones and internet, which is a pair that has to come together in order to work properly. Even with having access to all the information in the world at our disposal, we have issues that we simply don't want to address because we don't want to. And it's not easy to addressing any issues because it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time. You're not guaranteed an easy fix. It can take years to get something to work right. And even with dedication, sometimes things don't pay off or do so well. But with all the issues in the world right now, with a lot of wages being stagnant, with the cost of living increasing to the extent that couples can't afford to have children, which, depending on the area where a couple that wants to have kids is living, certain things will be there as factors, because some areas have high tax rates, some areas will tax couples who have children, and just as a general thing, this world has become very unforgiving for people who like to work together. For couples who want to have families, it is hard to have families when you can't get the money required to be able to actually care for said families. Because in this day and age, all walks of life require money to some extent. And counting money is not something people want to do, because when you have to count money, you know that you're not going to be able to get much of anything, and you can't afford the luxury of fun or afford to be happy, which is something I've seen is an issue that's continuing to get worse in society. Is a lot of people are, well, with the bad wages, are working so hard that fun is no longer an option for most people. For dating in general is not particularly cheap. And in some towns and some cities, dating is kind of a punishment now. Because you can spend time in the dating market, talking with people, making plans, and everything is going to cost a lot. Yeah. And if it wasn't for the fact that this world costs a lot, the fact that just having friendship is a transaction between people, there's just a lot that's there, and it's not going to be something that we can fix overnight. You have a lot of issues, it's almost like a conglomerate of issues that's just risen up from the ashes of, not quite the ashes of society, but it's risen from somewhere, and it's choosing to basically wage war on the social structures of this world, whether it be through religion, through science, or politics, through the trust of people have in their very leadership. Anyways, the next part of this playthrough, well, not playthrough, but playing PowerWash, I will be finishing this level. Thank you for watching, listening to my rambling, and have a good day, everyone. And to anyone who still stays for the last seconds, thank you for watching my video through, and I hope I give you all something to think about for the future to come. Goodbye now.